Hi everybody, this is Aaron Murakami with Eric Dollard, and today is July 5th, 2014, the day after 4th of July, and we just had the 2014 Energy Science and Technology Conference in Hayden, Idaho, which was an absolute success, very historical in the content that was shared. And so when you're taking your trip up here to Spokane just to come up and prepare for the presentation, some interesting good serendipitous things. You've posted, I was with you and we posted probably about 700 photos in ericpdollar.com. There's a bunch of different photo galleries and the blogs for the Long Lines project. There's some of the different places where you kind of camp out, you know, when you're out on the road, different Jeep trails you're on, and you know, everybody knows you drive, was a 1980 Toyota Corolla?
Yeah, 1980.
And you're out on some Jeep trail and you just ran across a 1980 Toyota Corolla engine with a couple distributors just laying there in the middle of the woods.
Maybe I can overhaul. Yeah, right next to my camp.
Right. So you just got out and there they are, parts for your car.
Yeah.
So, you know, so a lot
well,
of,
not a lot, but I mean, at any rate, you know, the things can be refurbished.
But out of any car in the world, it was,
it was identical.
Right.
Yeah.
So, you know, these kind of things have been kind of going on, so definitely, you know, the energy is just right for whatever's happening. And then so coming up here, and then we met with Steve Hills, who is the director of EPD Laboratories, the Glom Meister, who you know, goes around the country, you know, buys and sells old used surplus equipment, has hauled, you know, entire telephone exchanges and that kind of thing, and he has helped EPD Labs accumulate quite a bit of Glom for the lab.
Oh yeah.
And do you want to?
Well, he got the stuff moved that was here that was critical. A lot of capacitors and coils and transformers and things that you know, that are what I'm looking for. But the problem still exists as to how to handle all this material. There's no shelves or, you know, and trucking it around is $1,000 a pop. So that's kind of making it slow right now. But at least we finally got this load here out of the way before something happened to it.
And all of that is safely back at the lab already.
Yeah.
And
well, it's not a lab yet.
Developing.
So, right now it's just basically
in the making.
We just call it the building.
Right.
So it's the place we operate out of to work on the
becoming
lines.
a storage locker for quite a bit of equipment that's been accumulating for some time now.
Well, also it's we had the good fortune to meet with the town Glom Meister, who got some chunks out of the original 66-mile line I was going to get from the phone company. That project got screwed up and they tore it down, but he's got a whole bunch of poles and things we need, because otherwise the poles are about $600–700 a piece. It's amazing how fast you can spend $10,000 if you're trying to do anything at all.
Right.
You know, and the food bill and the gas bill and the whole thing's hideous.
Right.
So, you know, thousands of dollars just burn up right away in this project. I probably, you know, it completely exhausted my own personal funds on it to the tune of about $4,000 or $5,000. But at any rate, this guy has got the other stuff stashed, and looks like he can actually help us because he's got the truck for digging the holes and a lot of other things, and he's willing to back us up apparently in the whole deal. So that was another miraculous event. Right. Takes a lot of load off of us. Otherwise, we've got to go out to Death Valley and find these things, you know, and carry them back ourselves and attached to the pickup truck. It's a little harder to move the poles.
Right. Well, so you know, I definitely want to give a big debt of gratitude to you know, Mark McKay. He's the one who's the
he's the one that supplied all of it.
Yeah. The Ed Gray historian who's been, you know, tracking that technology for a long time. But he has a couple warehouses here in Spokane, and right around the time of last conference, about a year ago, is when we went through his warehouses and all his trailers, just full of all this equipment. It's probably one of the biggest collections in the Northwest United States for this old electronic surplus equipment that came from universities, you know, old Navy scopes and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, not a lot of military stuff, but he did have lots of test equipment. So the oscilloscope, frequency counters, and some of the stuff is too modern, so if anything goes wrong with it, you can't fix it. Right. I try to steer clear of that stuff, but if it works, you know, and then the components, and so at any rate, between what John Polakowski has found on eBay and the stuff that I got from there, we can build the necessary pulse modulator we need to operate the coils that we're building in the disruptive mode without fooling around with spark gaps and all that kind of garbage.
Are you talking about the cosmic induction generator?
Yeah.
Resonator coils?
Yeah, to go the impulse mode as well as the CW mode.
Okay.
So that's going to be a big construction project. Unfortunately, I no longer have the ability to manufacture equipment. That's another hurdle that's going to have to be overcome because I lost all my tools and everything. So I don't know. There's a long ways to go.
Right.
So that's why, you know, I don't use the term the lab.
Yeah.
That's where I work on the car, and then, you know, I have a soundproof room so I don't have to listen to the roaring devil trucks outside.
Right.
Drowned it out with loud Bach organ music, and that's where everything that, every presentation and book I'm writing now all comes out of that room.
Right. And John Polakowski did spend quite a bit of time there off and on over the last year where you guys were, you know, actually were doing the
quite a bit of
experiments on
time.
the
It's real
bench, but-
expensive for him to get out
Yeah.
there, you know, and he doesn't have a working vehicle
Right.
typically. So, but that's where we did the actual tests on the. I gave him the TCSs that were bought, you know, when the money originally was provided to get into the place. I made sure to get, you know, enough of the transmitters that we were going to need to start testing this stuff out. So I gave him one.
Right.
And then, so he brought his coils out, which I think you took pictures of and all that, and then we got the basic frequency response and all that stuff, impedances and all that established. So now he can start increasing the power on it and knows how to operate it.
And I did release quite a few of the photographs that I took of John Polakowski and you working on this, and some video clips, and even when you were going through the tuning and, you know, getting it to create the little electrical flames.
There was two. There was one
And,
where we were doing it in the back room, and then there was one where it was attached to the other Corolla. That was the later one, because the power supply operates on 12-volt batteries. So the whole, because it came off of a small Navy vessel, PT boat. So the natural thing to do was just, why change anything? Just connect it to the car.
Right.
So that's why you see the snout of the other car there in the background, because that's actually powering the apparatus. So it's kind of nice about that thing.
And when you're doing some of the tests where you and John plotted all the data out and then he put it in a spreadsheet and you can see the graphs where this is where the mention of it looks like energy is literally so-called desynthesizing right into counter
Energy's
space.
going somewhere with this
Because you
stuff.
can't account for it.
Yeah, it doesn't appear as heat or work or
Right.
light. It seems to be, with the series resonant systems, it seems to have the ability to make energy disappear, particularly in that configuration.
Right. And those graphs are posted in Eric Dollard's Facebook page, which his user ID there is Eric P. Dollard. And then in Energetic Forum, Eric's account is T-Rex. But I believe John Polakowski posted it in there too. And John's own personal website is johnpolakowskiscience.com. And he's posting a lot of the photographs and a lot of those charts of those tests that he did with Eric down at Eric's shop. And so you can take a look at those. And John is going to be documenting quite a bit more, and we'll be putting more photos and videos and tests. And so at this point, the cosmic induction generator is tuned up, everything for the power supply John has now. Now it's ready to step it up to the next power level.
Yeah, that's what he's working on. So
like for example at the conference, John did a presentation on the cosmic induction generator, and with the power supply that, you know...
the transmitter.
The transmitter.
Yeah.
What power range are we working on right now?
About 60 watts.
And so what's the very next step?
Well, he's probably going to go for about 800.
Okay, so
Yeah,
over 10
500,
times.
800.
Yeah.
But the effects only go up with the square root of the power. So if it's 10 times the power, the effects increase about 3.16 times. Well, exactly 3.16, but nothing's exact in that. So about 3 times.
Okay.
So you can't just, it's not a linear function, because it's the potential that's doing it, and that goes up with the square root of the power. So so you have to really have a massive power increase before you can really get, you know, a major step forward.
So, okay, so if the next step is, you know, roughly 800 watts, what is the maximum power that those particular coils...
We don't know yet.
Okay.
See, these things are the prototype for the giant ones that get built for the AM transmitters. But, you know, I'm not going to start off with the AM transmitter.
The big telephone booth size.
Yeah, well, you know, the things are, you know, they're
5,000 watts
They're
each.
like the size of my car.
Right.
So, fit the car inside if it was positioned right.
Right.
But I don't have the money. You know, it's going to cost
Right.
between $30,000 and $70,000. You know, to build the whole wiring system for the building and to
Right.
fight the power company to get real three-phase.
But at that point, with that big a power, you know, at the ultimate, that would be beyond Hollywood. I mean, that's,
Oh, it'd be stunning.
That's going into,
No, it'll be stunning.
into crazies
Yeah.
where people are going to question their own reality.
Yeah, we already did. We already did this in Santa Barbara. So
Right. So that was 2,000 watts, roughly, or
yeah,
back
I was
then?
using around 2,000 to 4,000 watts.
So the photos that people are seeing with these purple plasma
That
discharges.
was
with
1,000.
the
Most of those were 1,000 watts.
The photos that people are
Yeah.
able to see right now.
Yeah,
Okay.
that was about 1,000.
Mhm.
But then the flame speaker thing, I cranked it up to about 3,000 or 4,000.
Right.
So
Okay.
that's why we have the AM transmitters
Right.
to do the music part of it.
Okay. So I just want to, remind everybody that, right before the conference, there is probably about 750 new photographs put in there where you can see Eric's journey up here to the Spokane area right before the conference. A lot of the Jeep trails, some of his camps that he stays at, some of the camps over in Lone Pine.
Yeah,
where,
it shows where basically the places I stay in Lone Pine, and then
and that's where a lot of the papers were written.
well,
that John
yeah.
posted on the internet.
Oh yeah, well that's where the original Lone Pine writings came from. But then
Right.
a lot of stuff was written in this other location too, in the middle of Oregon. This isn't the first time I've gone to those places. So I've spent months there.
Right.
Writing the whole last presentation.
Right.
And that book. So it's hard to say where any of this stuff, actually, a little bit of it comes from this location, but the bulk of it is done outdoors.
Right.
And then when it's refined, then, I take it back to the main building and then just, disappear into my soundproof room and then put all of it together.
Right. Now, another one of the photo albums, which is basically deals with Landers, which was the facility that had the advanced seismic warning system already in
Amongst
place,
a lot of other
and
things. That whole
Earth
thing,
stereo,
that whole
and
thing was
there's-
basically a Navy communication station that I built from scratch.
So we
Covered the entire
right.
radio spectrum from 300 cycles a second to 3,000 megacycles a second. The spectral displays and multi-channel wideband receiving capabilities. To duplicate that is almost incomprehensible. 25 acres, of antennas and wires.
Right.
So there's some pictures got out. The person that has the pictures in his computer, it seems to be very uncooperative. It's part of that whole Marin County Tesla Society mentality. So I don't know. There were some copies made. Let's see if we can get them out. I hope so.
Okay.
And then there's a video that was taken just before the place got destroyed. So that will probably be about the best of all of it. So I still have to go through that. And,
Kind of a little guided tour of the
yeah,
the
I gave
facility.
like a
Yeah.
description of all the various, operating things there.
So if you go to ericpdollar.com, and if a lot of people are wondering about the advanced seismic warning system, if it's just theoretical, the answer is definitely no.
No, it's completely
there's-
engineered.
Yeah, completely engineered, and it was actually a working, it was
Tested.
it was being
Tested.
tested in the Landers facility.
Well, the Landers earthquake happened in Landers.
Yeah.
So yeah, that wasn't a very advanced system then, but it was strong enough to work. And then it did the Northridge earthquake.
Right.
And I don't know it because, Walt was operating it. I'd be gone for a year, and Walt was operating the station that was on his property. He made all kinds of determinations of things that kind of became the joke around town. Walt starts going, there's going to be an earthquake, and everybody laughs at him, and there's an earthquake.
Right.
So, and then I picked up the ionospheric reflection of the telluric signals from the Japan earthquake 2 days before it happened, and it basically read 100% on the chart recorder for 2 days. I think that's a pretty good forewarning. A noise storm like that only can come from a hurricane or an earthquake, and there were no hurricanes, and it was so strong I figured it was going to be San Francisco, but the foreshock occurred 1 hour after the onset of the noise storm, and then that was identified with Japan, so sure enough, that's what transpired.
So, so if you go to ericpdollar.com, there's in the left column you'll see different categories of so-called blog posts. They're really posted as photo albums, and there is one for landers, and there's we put maybe 20 pictures. There's about maybe 20
Yeah,
photographs.
we only have a few.
And there's some examples of some of the charts from different
What's
earthquakes
left of them.
that was measured
Yeah.
in the past.
Right.
And so you can check that out. And one of the other photo albums deals with this, the last remaining telephone facility using the old Bell
old
Labs
style,
equipment from
yeah.
like the 60s.
50s, 40s, actually 40s, 50s, and 60s.
Right, so if you see these aisles with all this equipment on the left and right, and millions of wires coming out of it, and all these relays and everything else, that's the type of, way before anything was digital, that's the type of equipment where if you made a phone call from one person to the next, it's all going through that type of equipment.
Went through that equipment.
And so what was your particular job or project where you got hooked up with the
was to
individual
get
who has
the carrier equipment that came off of the very lines that we're working on out in the desert, so that the signals could be sent from the central exchange to the port exchange in another building, so it would be a complete representation of the system.
Which is another interesting serendipitous thing without naming the location.
Right.
Here you have this location somewhere in the northwest where this secret telephone facility is fully operational, and that equipment actually came off of the
out of the very
location
buildings
that
that the lines went into.
that you're working with right now for the
Right.
seismic project.
Yeah.
So it's been kind of a crazy, synchronistic journey, but all these things are just like completely interlinked.
I mean, it looks like the voodoo's trying to make something happen. So
Right.
So at any rate, this particular facility is related to other facilities, and that's all part of the EPD Laboratories, is this whole network of remaining Bell telephone interests. Both the equipment and the know-how and all
Right.
that type of stuff.
So another photo album in ericpdollard.com is the Long Lines project, and I think that might be where we put the TD2 transmission sites.
Yeah, the TD2 site is one of the places where the lines that we're salvaging connected to. That's where they would go from the open wire mode to the radio mode, the repeater sites. Those are virtually all gone. That's what I was supposed to work on when I got out of high school in the phone company, was those sites. I had the transmitters for one in my parents' garage that I did my experiments with. That was the equipment I determined the mutation on the radish seeds with low-level microwave exposure was using TD2 equipment.
Okay. Microwave.
Yeah. Very low power.
And so you could see that it stunted their growth, and they just...
Yeah, well, it's more complicated than just stunted their growth. Well, yeah, they
Mutated.
grew. They grew. They grew to a smaller height, but in 3 times the speed. And the germination efficiency was better. And the fruit flies were outright killed by it, so we couldn't do any biological experiments on them to determine any kind of genetic damage. So that's basically, that's what you're holding next to your head with your silly phone.
And with microwave food, probably along those same lines.
Well, that's its own thing. I didn't study that.
Yeah.
So all I know is these organisms were only, being exposed to milliwatts of power, yet it had a profound impact on their being.
Right. So, from all this, and then, we're up here in the Spokane area, then we have the conference. Originally, Eric's presentation was scheduled to be, roughly about 2.5 hours. And the title of it is the Extraluminal Transmission Systems of Tesla and Alexanderson, which is the electrostatic communication method, which is not constrained by the so-called speed-of-light barrier and all this Einsteinian type of
not related to that
theory.
Yeah.
Completely not related. It's a completely different form of communication, and that's what the talk was basically about. And I helped pull out about 450 photographs off the internet to put together 2 PowerPoints, and then Jeff Moe helped kind of weave those together, and this presentation is so comprehensive that over a few weeks or so, well, actually you've spent quite a bit of time already writing the notes.
Yeah, I got about three months into it.
About
3
3
or 4
months.
months. Yeah, I was kind of a month behind, so,
Mm-hmm.
and then there wasn't time to give everything that was written for the presentation, but actually, like last time, it's going to turn into one or two books afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
So the book will have a different title. It'll be I have to look at my notebooks and see what it's supposed to be. I think it's the History, Theory, and Practice of Transmission Engineering. That's going to be the title of the book.
And so Eric's talk was the final keynote talk on Sunday at the end of the conference, and instead of being 2.5 hours, it turned out to be maybe a little over 4 hours, I think. And so it's giving the whole, first of all, it walks everybody through the history of, would you say,
Transmission.
just transmission in general?
Right, transmission has to be defined before we can start talking about it.
Okay.
So the first step was to explain to people what the whole transmission process is all about and how to symbolize it so that it can be applied to transmission systems that no one has ever known anything about on an engineering level, like those of Tesla and Alexanderson, and even common stuff that occurs in power lines and things that are completely ignored.
Mm-hmm. So with so after going through the history, and then you touched on the actual.
Well, then the main thing is to get the speed of light and the electron out of the picture.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the middle part.
Because it has nothing to do with this communication
Not directly.
system.
It's not
Right.
directly connected. It's a parasite that got hooked onto the deal, where sometimes it applies, but not always. So that had to be. I had to show where all that came from.
So it's probably the, even though there's a lot of technical information in this presentation, in concept, I think it's really pretty straightforward for the layman to look at the history of where relativity came from, the origins of it, where those ideas came from, and kind of where Einstein kind of jumped in and.
Well, Einstein and Minkowski, they worked as a team on this. So, and then it was really neither of them that came up with the relativity concept. That had preceded them by the work of some other people, and even, including Maxwell. So that's what I go through is to show how basically it's probably the only non-technical explanation of relativity and its origins that you'll ever find.
Yeah, so if you're interested, or if you believe in Einstein's theory of relativity and you believe he should take the credit for coming up with it, this just that alone is a serious reason to really get a copy of this presentation when it's available, to really look at the history, where it came from, and actually see what's what and how it relates and how it does not relate to.
Now, if I had the time, which I did, and I had to cut it off, I'll show the origins of the quantum concept and how it's gone wrong and how it applies to electricity, but that'll have to wait until it comes out in the book. So the book is probably going to be 3 or 4 months off before I have it finished.
So with today being July 5th, we're looking at having Eric's presentation released by the end of the month. There was, and besides the presentations of all the speakers, Gene Manning moderated a discussion panel where most of the speakers were up at the tables. Unfortunately, William Line was not up at the table with us because when I was gathering everybody up, I actually couldn't find him. But he did have 1 or 2 comments during the Q&A period, and during the so the discussion panel, that's actually going to be available as well. We're probably just going to release that on YouTube so everybody can kind of see, the perspective of each speaker. And compared to everybody else, Eric was definitely the contrast in his comments, to some of the questions.
The stuff that nobody wants to hear.
the non-romantic perspective.
No one wants to hear that the ship is sinking.
Yeah. So, so besides the discussion panel discussion, we're going to be releasing that, and I believe it's going to be Paul Babcock and Jim Murray's presentation on using reactive power as an energy source, and then Eric's presentation on the extraluminal transmission systems of Tesla and Alexanderson. All 3 of those we want to get out before the end of the month. Last year we're doing our best to get one presentation out every 2 weeks, but if we're able to get them done in time, we want to actually release one at least once a week, so everybody doesn't have to wait as long. So from your perspective, what was your feel on the conference and how people reacted, to your presentation and the questions that were asked?
Well, it was quite favorable. I was, kind of impressed that people liked it that much.
And from some of the questions, it seemed like a handful of people actually understood what you were talking about.
Yeah, it seemed, same thing with John's presentation, which is basically a presentation on something that I wrote decades ago on park benches in San Francisco, describing how the Tesla transformer operates in the impulse mode. Very complicated. He managed to handle it pretty well, and there was quite a few intelligent questions on the matter also. So I guess there's enough people there that understand the basics.
Right. And there was quite a few demos that were not on stage, but they're back in the exhibitor room. There's just a handful of vendors, because it's not really it's not an expo. It really is more of a conference where it's content oriented with what the speakers want to share. But there were a handful of vendors, and half of the tables had different devices on them showing demonstrations. Jim Murray and Paul Babcock's SERPs experiments, and some of the Bedini SG stuff. And then there was the cosmic induction generator that John had brought up. I guess one of the transformers actually about to catch on fire and started smoking.
Well, it smoked out. That was a tragedy, because it was all match set of equipment, and now he's got to find something else to stick in there, and that really so with all the complications of the missing tuning capacitor that he didn't put in the box, and the transformer taking a squat, and we barely had an hour to show the thing, but there really wasn't a lot to show because the power was so low.
Right.
But we did show some of the basic operating characteristics of it.
Right. And so those parts were obtained from John's shop, which was nearby, and so they were able to get that back and running. But with the smoking transformer, it came pretty close to setting off the fire alarm in the sprinkler system.
Well, the sprinkler system won't set off automatically. There has to be a heat source for that. So I don't know what anybody was thinking, but it would set the fire alarm off. Smoke detector.
So thankfully we didn't have to evacuate the building in the middle of a presentation.
Yeah, well, last year, the Mark McKay version, jammed out the bingo machine.
Knocked it out, right? Yeah. So John was able to demonstrate with the tube in between the coils where you can see the black spot, which is that neutral zone, where energy apparently is desynthesizing right into
things go into the neutral zone and things come out of the neutral zone. So that's what makes it interesting to study.
And which is the same so-called neutral spot that you were able to witness, like a galaxy form.
Yeah, that's where the formations come out of that particular area, and then fill the bulb.
Right. And so John Polakowski's presentation on the cosmic induction generator, that will be available at some point, probably early August, I believe. We'll be able to release his, and so if you're on any of the mailing lists, you'll definitely hear about it. Recently, there's quite a bit of, just by posting a few things about your presentation at the conference and kind of giving a rundown on all the other presentations, there's quite a few people who are definitely in Facebook. There's a pretty good following in there of, might be around maybe 2,500 people or so who have liked the Eric Dollard Facebook page, and they're commenting that they're, keep asking where the video is. Well, we still have to edit it and get that put together, and that's going to be available through emediapress.com to support Eric's work with his personal projects and with EPD Labs. If you purchase the presentation from ericpdollard.com, once it's posted on there, each sale, 70% of the proceeds will actually go to EPD Labs to help pay for equipment and move all those projects forward. Probably not in this video. We probably don't have time to go over really any of the Q&A of Facebook. We would still have to go through that, and Eric has to take off in about 2 days. And so we can probably do that over the phone at some point, because there's quite a few people who have asked different questions. And so, keep an eye out for that, but we'll have to do that at a separate time.
Yeah, it would be better if people sent their questions to the Lone Pine postal address.
Right.
Because then I can sit down and answer them, at my convenience. You either have to get, a shortwave radio or use the post office.
Right.
So you have to deal with me like I'm a ship out at sea.
Yeah. So if you wanna mail Eric a letter and get a letter response back in the mail, it's Eric Dollard, General Delivery, Lone Pine, California 93545. and that'll come straight to Eric. And
It
when
might take me a month or two to answer it, but you know, if it's a legitimate letter, it will be answered.
right,
You might not like what I say, but it will be answered.
right. So, you know, so as far as the Facebook, I'll kind of compile all the questions and stuff where I can just do it in a short period of time with Eric over the phone, and I can record that and put that up on YouTube. So that'll be coming out. Anything else? Any comments or any final messages to anybody, or?
No, not really. This
Anything?
whole thing has kind of left me exhausted. So, you know, basically I need to do a lot of eating and sleeping, watching television.
Right.
So it's. But at any rate, I am satisfied with the presentation. I don't think there's ever been anything like it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm rather have some bit of pride in accomplishing all that. So this is definitely, no one has ever taken it to this level before, where you actually can make calculations on the real stuff and determine its operation.
Mm-hmm. And so, you know, one other serendipitous thing is while Eric is here in town, he's getting a few parts for his car.
Well,
and
John found the new vibrators for the free energy fuse box.
And so that's up and running?
Yeah, so that was the biggest disaster in my life, along other, you know, past disasters. Is now my, you know, power converter is taking a crap in the car, and I don't have any replacement vibrators. Well, John managed to find some, and then at the tires I can't find any more of the car, so I can drive off-road. Well, we happened to stumble across some place that's got, you know, more than I could possibly carry or maybe even use in my lifetime. And then lo and behold, across the street, why, you know, I'm watching the car to make sure no one's monkeying with it while they're working on it. I see some kind of Navy thing, which makes no sense, but I see it there and it can't be right. So I go over and look at it to determine that it's not right, and it happens to be the Navy radar indicator that means that I can now make some of the CRT displays that I used to make when I was a kid, when I had access to all this stuff. So you can see these waveforms and things that can't be portrayed in any other type of device other than a radar indicator.
And it just happens to be across the street from a place where we're going to get tires that you can't find anywhere.
Yeah, well, I'm paying a pretty penny for it too.
Right.
But at any rate, it's there.
So Spokane is...
Yeah, and then I even found the steel wheels I needed for the car for when, you know, I'm using a different set of tires and all the trim that went on them. And so at any rate, you know, I'm kind of driving off a little less irritated than I usually am, or less depressed.
Right.
That, you know, everything isn't taking a squat around me and there's nothing I can do about it. So that's a step forward.
So how many years have you been looking for one of these type of radar indicators?
How many decades?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, when I lost my high school laboratory, you know, and that stuff all fell out of my hands after I got out of the Navy, I haven't had had a CRT display set up like that since 1970.
Well, we're going to get that, and that's going to wind up down in your shop, which will be a lab, you know, as soon as we're able to make it so.
Right.
So Steve will take another trip up here at some point, and there's
we got
there's
even
some
bigger
other stuff, right?
We've got 2 or 3 Glom missions going that looks like we're literally going to get cases of utility pole hardware and stuff like that, and God knows what kind of carrier equipment with the tubes, and you know, probably about 1 full tractor trailer load of this stuff. But unfortunately, you know, the gas money is the complication. It's expensive to move this stuff around. And the big complication now, which is going to require a fundraiser, is I need to build some kind of infrastructure to store all this stuff. I can't just be living in heaps of stuff, and then I can't do anything with it.
Right.
So we got to figure out. We figured the lumber and everything, because of the massivity of all this, it's going to be about $5,000 in lumber and you know, to pay the people that, you know, like me, don't get money to do this stuff to help me put it all together.
Right.
So it's a constant, there's constant barriers, but getting the material is the first step.
Okay. Now, so one last thing before we wrap it up is I want to mention about the Advanced Seismic Warning System and the Indiegogo campaign that was several months back for Eric and EPD Laboratories. For people who donated money to the campaign, I have in my hands, actually sitting out in my car right now, some autographed photos and some personalized letters. Those are going to be mailed out Monday when the post office is open. So look forward to those. There's a handful of people who will not receive them yet. I still have to verify the name and the mailing address, but we'll get those out. But 95% of them are done and will go in the mail early next week. Also, over the last few months, we haven't really put a lot of updates on what's going on there. But if you go to ericpdollard.com, there is a photo album in there where we're showing a lot of the photos where you and Justin are actually working on these poles.
Yeah.
And
so we completed phase 1.
Which is repairing and getting all the poles that's on the
Getting
property
everything
in good shape.
stabilized and, meeting the government requirements,
Right.
of nothing falling apart or, danger to the public or,
Right.
Any of that kind of stuff. So we got that done. There's no poles that are going to snap in half and screw everything up, and the ones that are all screwed up, have been taken down and have to be replaced later. It's extremely difficult.
Right.
Digging the holes in solid rock was absolutely brutal. 1 3.5-foot hole for a guy anchor took 2 days for 2 of us to dig, and really screwed Justin up pretty bad. He wasn't used to that, so it's not really that much of a problem for me. But so we were able to do our job for the city to get their. They had the problem is they had an abandoned communications lines that were tangled up with the 440, which they in turn will everything that we take down we can have, and anything that they don't need we can have. And they're basically, the city is now supporting the Advanced Seismic Warning Project and incorporating it into the Public Utilities District of the town there. So that's a definite step forward.
Right.
And the government agency that oversees that we're not screwing up and all that is absolutely flabbergasted that we did everything we said we were going to do in 5 weeks.
Right.
So now the next step, we have to wait till the weather's right and money builds up again. The next step is to go out in the Death Valley side of all this, and there's a long section of line out there, and we have to pull the whole thing down, glom it, and drag it, and that's going to take damn near a whole month.
Right.
So we have to get way back in there, with the 4-wheel drive apparatus, and we lost the truck into a sinkhole on one of these projects. It was hell to get it out. It's really dangerous to be driving around in these places.
Literally fell straight in.
Straight in, yeah, But at any rate, I'm used to doing that with the Corolla, so it was no problem with the 4-wheel drive truck. We got it out. But fortunately, the car was there to assist in the project, so that was a little scary. So that's what's supposed to happen in the fall, and then once we have loads of wire and cross arms and insulators and all the things that we need, we do hope in that interval to do some of our first receiving on the western section antenna, because we have the underground part there, and actually show that a lot of things that you thought were transmitted through the air also seem to be transmitted through the ground. So that will be some kind of working demonstration. Then we haul all that back to the location, and then in the spring we work on getting it up on how many poles we can, and then the following fall we put some kind of terminal equipment on it, and then have a crude but workable and something that can be demonstrated system that's picking these signals up out of the ground interference free on a continuous basis. And then after that all funds are expended, and 2 years have been expended, and we'll just have to see what happens next. It's unfortunate, the one can't be rebuilt there by Los Angeles, because they're going to get the big quake within 2 years, and
That's what the statistics say.
There won't be any landers to show how that came about. So if someone wants to cough up a few $1 million, it's in California to get a place to build it. The best way I found, is to build it on government property or on a military base or something, and then have it there. But I can't do that. I can barely keep all this together. I mean, it's just me and Justin that are doing all the work. He has to work for a living. There's no money to pay him, his wage.
Right.
People need to make money. I don't, but he does.
So in the there was about $26,000 that were raised for the Advanced Seismic Warning System.
Justin, takes 6 weeks off of work. I have to make sure he gets at least half his normal wage. So, and then, we have to take care of ourselves out there in the desert. We've got to be, lots of fruit juice and stuff like that. Costs a lot of money.
But you wound up with quite a few miles of
8 miles.
8 miles of wire, which is going to be used
various projects.
on the antenna.
Yeah.
Right.
Antenna and grounding systems.
So the poles are fixed. Those are in good shape. A lot of wire was accumulated.
Yeah, that's all
There's-
documented in the pictures
Right.
that are on the website. It shows, you know, us actually in the process of accomplishing all these things.
Yeah, if you see these big reels of wire that are just laying down on the ground, this is wire that they've been able to accumulate out in the desert off of old abandoned telephone line, you know,
Yeah,
telephone
it's
poles
a
and stuff.
special type of wire. It's copper-coated steel, so it has no scrap value.
Mm-hmm.
So people just leave it there. So at any rate, when DWP came through and trashed this line, well, nobody bothered to clean it up afterwards. So I spent about 10 years cleaning up 5 or more miles of this stuff, and used that to build landers. And now that, you know, that we've actually have gained, you know, the official use of the facilities and stuff, I'm cleaning up all the rest. It has to be done. We can't have a mess out there. That's our, you know, our agreement with the government is there can't be anything that's any hazard to the public. So, you know, the wild burros and stuff get tangled up in this, and people riding around on motorcycles, you know, so we had to do a lot of marching and roll up a lot of wire.
Right.
A lot of back and forth and back and forth and miles and miles and miles and miles of walking and dragging wire day after day after
Right.
day in that desert heat. So, which I needed. It's good exercise. But it's tough.
Right.
You know, you got to watch out you don't drop dead.
Right. But yeah, all that wire and everything is you know, valuable to the project, because that's what's going to be strung up on the poles to be used as part of the antenna system for the seismic warning system. And so just take a look at those photos, ericpdollard.com. And also, the final thing I want to mention is we're getting into the final editing phase of the Versor algebra book. With all the equations, most of the content is typed up. Just going through some final editing with Jeff, and then once that's all put together in a book, that's going to be that'll be available too, and we'll be making announcements on that. The content for that book is also going to be copy and pasted into energetic form. It's going to be posted first in ericpdollard.com as blog posts, just so it's an easy place for us to upload those images and that content. And then once it's in there, we can copy and paste it into energetic form. And so when that's in there, chunks of it will be going out about once every 5 to 7 days or so on a regular basis. And then, but it will all be in one comprehensive book.
Yeah, that's basically the second volume of the last presentation, the four-quadrant.
Four-quadrant
Yeah, that's
representation
the
of electricity.
the full mathematical extension. So you really have to read the four-quadrant book before you read that book, and then all the pieces will fit together.
Right. Yeah, watch the video presentation. It's on fourquadranttheory.com, and there's links to it at ericpdollard.com for Eric's presentation last year, which is four-quadrant representation of electricity. And as a companion to the video, there's a pretty comprehensive book that walks you through that. And so this Versor algebra book is basically part 2 to that presentation, which is all in book form.
Yeah.
And so stay tuned for that. And
Yeah, so this will be happening this time around too. So there's probably going to be 2 more books in the course of the year that'll come out on this subject. And after that, I might finally be tired of this.
and then focus on the experiments.
Well, if I can. I mean, it's really,
Right.
you know, after a while it kind of wears you down.
Yeah. Well, hopefully by that time, when these are out of the way, then at that point should be enough equipment accumulated that you can actually get back
Yeah,
to the bench
I
and
think
start
so.
doing
I
what
think
you
at
want to
least
do.
I got enough stuff now I can get a basic
Right.
test bench together.
Right.
That's a good start.
So it looks like the timing is going to work perfect.
Also, you know, in the photographs of the lander station, anything that's seen in those racks, if anybody has anything like that, I desperately need it.
Okay.
Particularly the chart recorders and the Navy tactical radio thing that's in the whole cabinet that has the seismographs in it. Everything that's in that so-called display Navy position or display console is I am in desperate need of that equipment. I have no chart recorders to put any earthquake information or anything on right now, and I cannot find them.
Okay. So you can look at that equipment in ericpdollard.com. There's a Landers photo album, and you can see the equipment Eric is talking to.
And hopefully we'll have some more photographs out pretty soon.
Yeah, I'm working on getting some good copies of a whole bunch of photographs that most people have never seen yet. And again, that Landers tour on video, where Eric kind of gives a guided tour of the facility, that'll be coming out pretty soon too. So, any final words, or?
Well, we need to build another one of those things as soon as possible in Southern California. So I don't know how that's going to happen, but it's nothing that a 55-gallon drum of gold nuggets wouldn't correct.
Right.
Someone runs across one of those, and we can put the thing right together, maybe. Otherwise, you know, it's kind of like, what can I say? You know,
Right.
if no one's interested in anything like that.
Well, hopefully with this, the current advanced seismic warning system that's going on, and you had posted some pictures of a secondary site, which is, it's like a two-part
There's two of
component
them.
to kind of
Yeah,
give like
there's
a,
two of them.
almost like a stereo
Yeah, we want to
view
get
of-
a perspective of what's going on
Right.
with the earth signals in that area.
Right.
But that particular area is not, it's not expected to face a devastating earthquake, and it's not particularly a place where we're going to find a source of signals emitted by a devastating earthquake, because there isn't a devastating earthquake. So the best we can do there is use it for demonstration purposes and just study of the telluric signals in general. But the right now the most important place to have working stations is in California, because it's statistically it's time. So once the solar cycle goes through its peak and goes back down, that's when this stuff starts popping up. There's a zigzag effect that Northern California, southern, northern, southern, northern, southern. So Loma Prieta was the last one. It's northern. So statistically, it'll be LA, but statistics aren't necessarily something you can rely on.
Okay, so we're just talking about the
Potential earthquakes in California.
yeah, and the multi-system approach, which, for example, in the Indiegogo campaign, we never really mentioned that there were going to be two systems set up, but that is in fact what is actually in progress, is the one near Eric's lab, and then the other one is at a distant place from there, so you can kind of get a stereo kind of view
Right.
of
Perspective.
the earthquake signals. That way, I guess you can't totally triangulate
Well,
it.
it's not just earthquake signals. There's a whole variety. It's tornadoes and hurricanes and solar flares. This is all a complex thing. The earthquake thing is not isolated.
that's just
deal.
one- that's just
they
one-
all
one benefit.
connect together.
Okay.
The weather and everything all connects together. So this will give us our opportunity to keep continuous track of that again.
Right. So anyway, thanks for listening, and if you want to know how to donate money to EPD Labs, you can go to ericpdollar.com. There's the address there. You can send check or money orders to help support the work, or even donate through PayPal. And with that, I guess we'll go ahead and wrap it up, and thank you for watching.
Thank you. Identical.
Right.
Yeah.
So these kind of things have been kind of going on. So definitely, the energy is just right for whatever's happening. And then so coming up here, and then we met with Steve Hills, who is the director of EPD Laboratories, the Glom Meister, who
Right.
goes around the country, buys and sells old, used, surplus equipment, has hauled entire telephone exchanges and that kind of thing, and he has helped EPD Labs accumulate quite a bit of glom for the lab.
Oh yeah.
And do you want to?
Well, he got the stuff moved that was here that was critical. A lot of capacitors and coils
Right.
and transformers and things that that are what I'm looking for. But the problem still exists as to how to handle all this material. There's no shelves,
Right.
or and trucking it around is $1,000 a pop. So that's kind of
Right.
making it slow right now. But at least we finally got this load here out of the way before something happened to it.
And all of that is safely back at the lab already.
Yeah.
And
Well, it's not a lab yet.
developing.
So, right now it's just basically
making.
we just call it the building.
Right.
So it's the place we operate out of to work on the
Becoming a
lines.
storage locker for quite a bit of equipment that's
Yeah.
been accumulating for some
Well,
time
also it's we have the good fortune that that's where I work on the car, and then I have a soundproof room, so I don't have to listen to the roaring devil trucks outside.
now. Right.
Drowned it out with loud Bach organ music, and that's where everything that every presentation and book I'm writing now all comes out of that room.
Right. And John Polakowski did spend quite a bit of time there off and on over the last year, where you guys were, actually were
not
doing
quite
the
a bit of
experiments on
time.
the
It's real
bench, but-
expensive for him to get out
Yeah.
there, and he doesn't have a working vehicle
Right.
typically. So, but that's where we did the actual tests on the I gave him the TCSs that were bought, when the money originally was provided to get into the place. I made sure to get, enough of the transmitters that we were going to need to start testing this stuff out. So I gave him one.
Right.
And then, so he brought his coils out, which I think you took pictures of and all that. And then we got the basic frequency response and all that stuff, impedances and all that established. So now he can start increasing the power on it and knows how to operate it.
And I did release quite a few of the photographs that I took of John Polakowski and you working on this, and some video clips, and even when you were going through the tuning and getting it to create the little electrical flames.
There was two. There was one where we were doing it in the back room, and then there was one where it was attached to the other Corolla. That was the later one, because the power supply operates on 12-volt batteries, so the whole, because it came off of a small Navy vessel.
Hi everybody, this is Aaron Murakami with Eric Dollard, and today is July 5th, 2014, the day after 4th of July, and we just had the 2014 Energy Science and Technology Conference in Hayden, Idaho, which was an absolute success, very historical in the content that was shared. And so when you're taking your trip up here to Spokane just to come up and prepare for the presentation, some interesting good serendipitous things. You've posted, I was with you and we posted probably about 700 photos in ericpdollar.com. There's a bunch of different photo galleries and the blogs for the Long Lines project. There's some of the different places where you kind of camp out, when you're out on the road, different Jeep trails you're on, and everybody knows you drive, was a 1980 Toyota Corolla?
Yeah, 1980.
And you're out on some Jeep trail and you just ran across a 1980 Toyota Corolla engine with a couple distributors just laying there in the middle of the woods.
Maybe I can overhaul. Yeah, right next to my camp.
Right. So you just got out and there they are, parts for your car.
Yeah.
So, so a lot
well,
of,
not a lot, but I mean, at any rate, the things can be refurbished.
But out of any car in the world, it was,
I meet with the town Glom meister who got some chunks out of the original 66-mile line I was going to get from the phone company. That project got screwed up and they tore it down, but he's got a whole bunch of poles and things we need, because otherwise the poles are about $600-700 a piece. It's amazing how fast you can spend $10,000 if you're trying to do anything at all.
Right.
And the food bill and the gas bill and the whole thing's hideous.
Right.
So thousands of dollars just burn up right away in this project. I probably it completely exhausted my own personal funds on it to the tune of about $4,000 or $5,000. But at any rate, this guy has got the other stuff stashed, and looks like he can actually help us because he's got the truck for digging the holes and a lot of other things, and he's willing to back us up apparently in the whole deal. So that was another miraculous event. Right. Takes a lot of load off of us. Otherwise, we've got to go out to Death Valley and find these things, and carry them back ourselves and attached to the pickup truck. It's a little harder to move the poles.
Right. Well, so I definitely want to give a big debt of gratitude to Mark McKay. He's the one who's the
he's the one that supplied all of it.
Yeah. The Ed Gray historian who's been tracking that technology for a long time. But he has a couple warehouses here in Spokane. And right around the time of last conference, about a year ago, is when we went through his warehouses and all his trailers, just full of all this equipment. It's probably one of the biggest collections in the Northwest United States for this old electronic surplus equipment that came from universities, old Navy scopes and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, not a lot of military stuff, but he did have lots of test equipment. So the oscilloscope, frequency counters, and some of the stuff is too modern, so if anything goes wrong with it, you can't fix it. Right. I try to steer clear of that stuff, but if it works, and then the components, and so at any rate, between what John Polakowski has found on eBay and the stuff that I got from there, we can build the necessary pulse modulator we need to operate the coils that we're building in the disruptive mode, without fooling around with spark gaps and all that kind of garbage.
Are you talking about the cosmic induction generator?
Yeah.
Resonator coils?
Yeah, to go the impulse mode as well as the CW mode.
Okay.
So that's going to be a big construction project. Unfortunately, I no longer have the ability to manufacture equipment. That's another hurdle that's going to have to be overcome because I lost all my tools and everything. So I don't know. There's a long ways to go.
Right.
So that's why, you know, I don't use the term the lab.
Yeah.